Alright, so page 1 is where we'll start. Today's the 5th. Yep. So we're going to start on 10.3, which is conditional. Statements. You can go through and number off the pages on your notebook. So be 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, 11. Okay, so a conditional statement. First example, if you are not completely satisfied, then your money will be refunded. That's a conditional statement. Another name for an if-then statement, which is what this was, if, then, is conditional. Conditional statement. A conditional statement is a type of logical statement with two parts, a hypothesis and a conclusion. The if part contains the hypothesis. The then part contains the conclusion. So what is the hypothesis for the first one? Correct. If you are not completely satisfied, then what would the conclusion be? You'll get your money. Your money will be refunded. Okay, so example 1. Identify the hypothesis and the conclusion. So, hypothesis . Conclusion . The hypothesis is, if it is noon in New York, then it is 9 a.m. Fresno. Example 2. If y minus 3 equals 5, then y equals 8. What's the conclusion? What's the conclusion? What? Yes, then y equals 8. The hypothesis if y minus 3 equals 5. Example 3, identify the hypothesis and the conclusion. Let's underline it this time. So if my truck doesn't start, what part is that? Then I am out of gas. Okay, let's write our own conditional statement. 2 points are collinear if they lie on the same line. So we're going to write our conditional statement. So if 2 points are collinear, then they lie on the same line. This is an if-then statement, conditional. Write each statement as a conditional. The number 2 is a factor of every even number. So if a number is even, what's the conclusion? Then 2 is its factor. Then it wrote that wrong. Then 2 a factor. Turn the page. Okay, conditional statements can be true or false. To show a conditional statement is false, describe a single counterexample that shows the statement is not always true. A counterexample, write a counterexample to show the following conditional statement is false. If it is February, then there are only 30 days in the month. What is a counterexample to that? Correct. What is the Y? Okay, next one. Write a counterexample to show the following conditional statement is false. If you live in a country that borders the United States, then you live in Canada. How do we prove this false? So, Mexico also borders the U.S. and is not Canada. Write a counterexample to show the following conditional statement is false. If my truck doesn't start, then I am out of gas. So how can we prove this wrong? What? Okay, so how do we write that as a counter? How about if I don't have a battery, my truck won't start. And I still have gas. Okay, the converse of a conditional switches the hypothesis and the conclusion. So we're going to take those two parts and switch them. Keep the if and the then in the same spot, but we're going to switch those two parts. So if two segments are congruent, then they have the same length. So a converse statement would be if two segments, have the same length, then they are congruent. You take the hypothesis and switch it with the conclusion. But the if and the then will stay. Also, I want the two segments part to stay because I want to know what we're talking about the same thing. Okay, another one. If my truck doesn't start, then I am out of gas. So, if I am out of gas, then my truck won't start. Okay, there's a couple more statements that we need to know about in this chapter. One is the inverse. The inverse statement. Negates or puts not in the original statement. So an inverse negates or puts not in the original statement. So for example, if two segments are not congruent, then they are not the same length. That's an inverse. You put a not in the hypothesis and you put a not in the conclusion. Okay, last one. Contrapositive. Does both. It's a converse and inverse statement.